Something else. Ja, das sieht gut aus. It cannot surprise you that Hitler wanted a supergun, and by now it can also not surprise you that SS General Hans Kammler was eventually put in charge of it and made it work, and actually fired it towards the Allies. But what do you really know about the sites, the location, and the history of this weapon? We've been told it wouldn't have worked, but is that entirely true? It all started in 1857, when a gentleman named Asa Lyman was granted the patent for an improvement in acceleration firearms as a concept for a multi-chamber gun. It did not work for him. In 1870, he teamed up with James Haskell, and together they built the Haskell-Lyman multi-chambered gun. This worked quite well, and a full-sized artillery piece was proposed and built. That resulted in a nearly 5-ton behemoth cannon with some issues still to be resolved. The gun was then, as it was through its entire history, known as an accelerator in which a series of chambers were arranged at the side of the bore for containing charges of powder which exploded in succession as the projectile moved along towards the muzzle, until the combination of charges exerted their full force upon the base of the shot to throw it or propel it out. We now fast forward to 1918. The French army was making plans for a very long-range multi-chambered gun in response to the German Paris gun. The Paris gun could fire over a distance of no less than 125 kilometers. It made a huge impact on the Allies as it was firing from ranges beyond Allied artillery into Paris. It was, after the war, dismantled and destroyed. Even the plans of it were destroyed, and so secret they was only found back in the 1970s, but that story we'll get to later. The French prototype did not even reach the testing stage as the war ended in 1918. So we fast forward to 1940, and with the German conquest of France, Germany acquired the plans of their long-range gun. This attracted the attention of August Condès. He was the developer of the Röchling shell and chief designer of the plant's Röchling Stahlwerke AG. He thought that the gradual acceleration of the shell by a series of small charges spread over the length of the barrel might be the solution to the problem of designing a very long-range gun. Now, Condors built a prototype of a 20mm multi-chambered gun using machinery already available at the Wetzlar plant. The first tests were encouraging, but he needed to get the support of the Ministry of Arms, Albert Speer. So Hermann Röchling presented the idea to him. Condor's project of a cannon capable of firing on London from the coast of Pas-de-Calais. The project intended to use 2 batteries to shell London under a barrage of 100 shells per hour, shells weighing 140 kilograms, with an explosive charge of 25 kilograms. The Röchling shell was developed for the 21cm Mörser 18, a captured French 34cm, 674 feet railway gun, and the 35cm howitzer M1. In addition, many experimental high-explosive shells were made for the PaK 37 and the PaK 50cm guns. Major Bock of the Festung Pionierstab 27 conducted a study in early 1943, concluded that a hill with a rock core would be the most suitable, as the gun tubes could be placed in inclining tunnels and support equipment supplies located in adjacent tunnels underground. The guns would thus not be movable and would be permanently aimed at London. A limestone hill near Memiec in Calais, where the V1 and V2 launch sites were already under construction, was chosen. Organization Tod began construction in September 1943 with the building of railway lines to support the work. Then they began excavating the gun shafts angled at 50 degrees, running 105 meters deep, beginning in October. The initial layout comprised of 2 parallel facilities approximately 1,000 meters apart. each with 5 drifts, were to hold a stacked cluster of 5 gun tubes, for a total of 50 guns. Both facilities were served by an underground railway tunnel and underground ammunition storage galleries. The gun muzzles were protected by a heavy steel cover and armored door. Extensive tunneling, elevator shaft supported the guns, and if the site had become operational in time, about 1,000 troops from Artillery Abteilung 705 and supporting units would have been deployed there. It all took up speed after the bombing of Peenemünde. On August 19th, Speer arrived at Rustenburg for a meeting with Hitler to discuss the bombing at Peenemünde. At this meeting, Hitler tasked him to begin work on the high-pressure pump, as it was called, and install it in the Calais area. Now that Peenemünde was burning, and it would set the rocket program back several months, this innovative gun seemed to Hitler as another option with which to take the war back to London. He ordered maximum support behind the project, even before the firing trials had finished at Hillersleben. He knew it was a gamble, but Speer, after having witnessed the first trials, was certain it would have functioned and stated as much after the war. There was to be 25 guns in each battery. Each barrel was 130 meters long, and the site's enormous electricity needed was personally approved by Hitler. But already in November, the 9th Air Force bombed the site, and only one of the sites were then developed. But this would still have been enough to sustain fire on London at the rate of 1 shell every 12 seconds. Now the British had detected something was going on, and even the false haystacks they put up for camouflage, but they had no idea what was actually going on underground, and only vague rumors had reached them. Some 5,000 engineers and 450 miners had by 1944 nearly completed the tunnels and the sub-tunnels, and it was estimated that a 5,000 kilowatt power station had been installed. At the end of 1943 September, Speer informed Hitler that trials with the 2 cm version warranted a full 6-inch prototype gun built and tested. Now they needed to settle on the shell itself. The Röchling was proposed, of course. The first shell fired attained 5,500 feet per second. That was only a third of the speed needed to reach London, and the stabilizing fins were found at times to flutter. Yet Hitler ordered first 2,500, then 10,000 of these shells produced per month. It was not until March, after a series of disastrous tests, it was clearly established that the 300-pound Röchling was too heavy and toppled at a speed of 3,300 feet per second. And 20,000 shells, now unsuitable, had already been produced. The problems were beginning to show with the development of the gun and the shell. Yet the engineers and Condors himself was certain that the gun would work, and when the correct shell had been developed, of course. Also, the site had now by itself cost twice of what was expected. General Buller suggested to Hitler that they restrict the manufacturing to 3 guns and 5,000 shells per month. Both the Reich Research Council and the Army Weapons Office suggested ballistics and suggested new designs for the shell. Also, Skoda submitted designs. The project was suggested cancelled several times. It was only for Hitler's insistence that it was kept going. Several conferences and admissions of mistakes later made by the firing trials were improved. Wind tunnel testing proved that it could be done, and work continued. In July 5th, 6th, the new 6-foot shell flew 58 miles. However, the barrel burst on the 6th shot. The engineers then called I.G. Farben for advice, and different approaches on trial and errors using developing the shells and barrels had cost implementation of the gun at least 6 months. Had only Condors taken a more scientific approach to developing the shell, this could have been avoided. The British suspected a long-range rocket, or long-range gun, and had issued standing orders to conduct constant vigilant reconnaissance of all German-occupied areas within 150 miles of London. One of the strange observations of the war was these enormous construction sites for the V weapons were hardly camouflaged at all. And at Mimiek, one of the tells of this site was the curving rail track taking supplies into the tunnel. It will be almost impossible to miss it from the air, and certainly it was not, and no attempts have been made of camouflaging it. Still, the British had no actual idea of what they were looking at or going on inside the mountain, but they suspected the worst. The site was bombed several times and continuously. Sometimes it would only set the work back for a day or two, and sometimes more, as some of the German wartime reports on the bombing and their destruction and continued work had been found after the war. The site was finally put out of commission permanently on 6 July 1944 when the RAF Bomber Command 617 Squadron, using tall boys, destroyed the remaining of the site, at least on the surface. The site was then evacuated eventually before the Allied advance. Soon after the Allies had taken possession of the location, Colonel Saunders arrived to work out his report with specialists on the site. Much of the information I am presenting here is from the Saunders report. Some of Saunders' observations were: steel doors for the train tunnels were found, but at the Batan site. There were collapses on the lower levels due to falls. The lowest firing chambers were flooded and could not then be visited due to bursting groundwater, and there was some evidence that the Germans had sabotaged the lower levels before they left. Of the tunnels, 60% of them had been concreted. Some shafts were also made for ventilating gases from the firing 416 feet deep into the mountain. They were also covered by 18 feet concrete slab, leaving just a very small opening for the projectiles to leave from. None of the shafts had at the time been lined with cement. Behind me is the tunnels to the big German cannon that was supposed to be shelling England. But it wasn't just one. There was a bunch of them lined up. But in here is a very, very special place that I think you need to visit while you still can. Come into the tunnel. That should have gone to almost all the way up here, but one tall boy hit it and destroyed the tunnel down to there. So this is where one tall boy came through.
So one tall boy came through. There are 8
Right
tall
here.
boys were sent, and only 16 were sent, and 8 touched the base, but one only made the job to go in on the corner of the concrete slab.
So this was never supposed to have been an entrance. The entrance was supposed to be 20 meters behind me.
Big galleries were digged for only 3 firing shafts, really, when you see.
But they were planning on 5. Several firing shafts were destroyed throughout the bombing, leaving only 3, 4, and 5 where work was primarily carried out. It was also only these that had concrete slabs poured from above. Much of this was hidden.
Everything here.
Yes, because it was all destroyed. It was a little bit destroyed, and then Churchill destroyed more.
Yes, that's
Damn Churchill.
They did that. Dynamite was actually Churchill. The dynamite, he asked the engineers to come and dynamite.
Wow.
It's where the train was coming in. You see the
Yeah.
rail you still see the rail on the floor, and the train was coming in from Germany over there at the end, and going out that way. It was coming in with all the ammunition and all the material they needed to build the galleries.
So they already started bringing ammunition and things in.
Yeah, but we didn't find a lot of pieces of V3. To put the shell in the bridge block, really, it was underneath. All the launching site really is underneath at minus 100 meters. You know?
Yes. Well, I didn't know, but...
So, yeah. Galleries were built they started building it in June 43. And it's been bombed the 6th of July 44 by the Royal Air Force. But before, they've bombed it with tall boys.
Is this one of the cave-ins?
No, this we don't know really what's this part of thing.
Did we ever dig it out?
There's a lot of things we don't know because we don't have a lot of reports here, you know. What we know is that there are few levels, that you have the same galleries, that there was a train. There was 11 lateral galleries over there like that. And those lateral galleries were keeping to stock all the material.
So we don't know what's buried in here?
No, this one we don't know. But it's after it's been dynamite that lots of things like that just fall off, you know.
Yeah, of course.
It's a part that perhaps fall off.
Yes, sir. I mean, certainly the British removed.
Yeah, and at the end of the year 44, the English came to do some reports, you know,
Yeah.
to see. And then in May 45, Churchill ordered all the engineers to dynamite the site.
Yes.
That's why all the 11 galleries are on the top.
And this is the separation.
That's what to bring all the electricity, you know.
Yeah, you must have had quite a few of these.
Yes, these are big ones, and you have a lot of more of them behind over there.
And you found, oh yeah, here I can see the, that's from the explosion, yes. Yeah, that's all the fragments from when they blew this.
So you saw this one is bigger, higher, because that was where the train was coming in. That was the main gallery, and it's all the concrete was finished. But all those galleries are only chalk because it was only to stock all the material. You know, these lateral galleries are not built the same way. There's no concrete like this one. And all the concrete was coming from the top.
So they built a little construction site on top.
Yeah.
And then they've
put the concrete to do these galleries.
They did the same thing.
You have holes like that because all the concrete was coming from the top. Then they used wood to do things like that, you know, like you do when you do construction.
Yes, they did the same thing at the Riese complex.
Yeah, so you know that is one of these 11 lateral galleries after the dynamite.
Yeah, but yes, I wonder if there's a fire in here because the roof is black.
So apparently, we've asked the historian because, as I told you before, like Paul, you know, was here, keep the site from 2011 to 2015. It's like who pulled that on the site, really.
It was
even if the owner is the natural site. And we've asked the historian, the person you saw yesterday, and he told us that all the black you can see must be the dust of the dynamite.
Yeah, that's the,
You know?
Oh, and there you can see, so this, here section came out here.
Yes, and that's the section at the map, and you can see all the tube there. You can see that the concrete was coming up from the top.
So we're under the mountain, we're, what, 30 meters under?
30 meters underneath, yes.
And we already have, and we have another meter and a half of cement up here.
Yeah, and underneath our feet, so at -70 meters, you have the launching site. But nobody never went down because it's been flooded. The water table was touched when the tall boy came through, and then the water came up.
So nobody's been down there?
Nobody went there. We don't know really what happened underneath.
Is there access to the water? With a water drone?
We might have access to in a shaft over there, but as I told you, as here it's protected now by the law for the bats.
But the bats don't swim underwater. No documents were found on the site, but in the nearby village, the main construction company was found, and here's a lot of records that was found by them, Schachtenbau und Tiefbohr. By June, the Germans had begun to remove the equipment back to Germany, thus quite little was found at the actual site.
And they were putting some dynamite there, and that all the steel, all the trace there, trace of pickaxes and pneumatic drill like that.
Yeah, this was all drill by drill, and then blow, and then drill, and then blow, and then clean out rubble.
They were putting a bit of dynamite before, so it'd be easier to dig.
Yeah.
And then they were using all these pickaxes there. But there's more than 2 kilometers that have been built you know,
Yeah.
just here at minus 30 meters plus the underground. And we're just visiting a part of it.
And the other.
To add another thing like that, another gallery of the dynamite, really.
We have to dig this out.
But
We have to get in there.
That today, without the authorization, normally. And here we are in front of the first firing shaft, because there should be normally 5 firing shafts.
Yeah.
The main project of Hitler was to build 2 sites like this one,
Yes.
at 1 kilometer apart, and to build 5 firing shafts or 5 cannons per site. So 50 cannons of together, and send about 6,000 shells per day on London. That was the main plan.
So this is from the
That's
dynamiting.
the emplacement of the first firing shaft.
So this is from the dynamiting as well.
Yeah, it's been bombed and dynamite. That's why it's only what's left, really.
And there used to be a wall there. Is that that was a post-war wall?
And you saw here the electricity, what's left of, you have little things like that every 12 meters. So it was poured on the electricity for all these labor at certain places.
See signs of shrapnel.
So we're going to be at this, this is the second firing shaft, but that is only a copy of the cannon.
Yes.
That is not a real cannon, it's not the good scale either, because all the additional charges normally were supposed to be at 3 meters 17 each, So that's just to give you an idea of how the diameter of 15 centimeters and 127 meters long. So you still have to imagine 30 meters on the top.
Right now we're 32 meters below the firing ports at the top of the mountain. Below us is some 70 meters down, and there are 2 more levels for servicing the cannons, and of course the breach on the very lowest level, accessed by elevator shafts. Permanent access was lifts to the lower level were to be installed in these tunnels. Parts of the lifts were found on site. Also was 1,000 tons of steel material that was assembled in the tunnels, which took a long time for the investigators to identify, but proved to be mostly for the gun installation. And there was only found enough materials to practically erect 2 of the guns.
So here we are at the third firing shaft. What's left of it, the steel.
Actually, sunshine.
Yeah,
Sunshine.
that's an open field one.
That's why you have this, so nobody can crawl in here. I would never.
With a rope. Oh, do you think so?
If you hadn't let me in today, yeah, maybe. This is the tunnel that would lead on to more.
Yes, that is normally a part of these galleries, that were completely bombed and dynamite.
And this is also destruction
and
after the war.
normally going down over there. And this is a part of one of the 11 lateral galleries as well that you can see. But we can't, we see it the other way. We saw 1 or 2 from the main galleries, and now we see it from the other way because it's completely
destroyed.
And you see there's a lot of, here is chalk, and you see what these black thing is, I don't know how do you say.
Really need to get permission to dig in here. Somehow.
I know, but you're not the first to ask. Lots of persons already asked, but we never had the authorizations.
I am very, very, very persistent.
You can see from here, the concrete was coming from the top, and if you bend here, you can see a tube over there that show where the concrete was coming from. If you bend like that, there's a part of a tube over there.
Oh yes, I see it. I see it. So the cement will come down here and then they will mix it here.
They will mix it here.
That's a cement. Oh, that's a cement bag.
Here, you see here.
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. They did the similar thing at Calais, where they had the cement production up above. Yes.
You know, you have to find the name of silex. Because the chalk is made with little algae, minuscule algae in the sea.
Yes.
And the silex was made with the dust of the volcans, but million years ago, you know. And from the first line to the other line, there's 1,000 calories, like I told you before, here.
And that's why there's...
But this thing, I don't know why it's been like that, because normally it's so chalk. Perhaps it's... I don't think it's the private owners that have done that. I think
No. This is
just people, perhaps to protect perhaps, you know.
I mean, there's a steel girder going through, and it's...
some wood as well.
Yeah, it's sitting on the wood as support.
Yeah, perhaps it's for the room there to do the Simon, perhaps. I don't know.
You know, I've seen a lot of German bunkers underneath. I haven't seen... Usually they do a dome, or they do an egg shape. Just a cut-off triangle like this in a big room like this is strange.
Yeah.
This is interesting. This is actually very interesting. This looks...
See some bats because they are going here 6 months, and then they're going, and sometimes they're here.
I've met a lot of bats lately.
So there, the intention was a lift normally, because to go underneath there were ladder and some lift as well, you know.
This is where the lift would be installed for shafts 1 and 2, and these are the only photos that could be taken by the sauna's report. Everything else below this was flooded, but there was little there to see. 4 vertical shafts had been dug, made it to the lower levels of some 30 to 100 meters down. These were partially destroyed by the bombing. And the little platform. Yeah, they were still working on this. Did they even begin to install the cannons? Did they begin to install the cannons?
The cannons, they were not installed.
The cannons never got here.
It was perhaps 1 or 2 months after, because they were still doing the test in Germany or Poland.
Yeah, I know
they didn't have time to do that. You know?
Yeah, and see the shrapnel from the
detonations
detonations again.
Dynamite as well.
And that's when they blew this corner. I wonder why they blew this corner. But there was an explosion here.
Yeah, yes, because you have trace of it.
Yeah. I was like, I wonder why.
And the firing shaft was... You see better trace here as well.
Yes.
And that as well is the, you know, that's coming from the top. You know, it's marble.
Oh.
It's some chalk and some...
Yeah, they
how
really...
How do you say marne? We call that marne. It's from chalk and earth, really, you know. It's mixed.
This was this tall boy, or was this explosion after?
No, that's the dynamite as well.
The dynamite as well. Yeah, they really were determined to do it right.
Yeah, to dynamite.
Oh, it was Churchill. He didn't trust the French either.
Yes.
He was afraid you guys were going to do it.
He trusts nobody, really. Two really good friends with De Gaulle.
He didn't ask de Gaulle.
No,
Okay.
he didn't ask the...
Well, I have to ask. There's a Danish flag.
This memorial was done by private owners. As they were private here, they could do what they wanted. Everybody still, that's why you have all these ones.
People steal the flags.
You have enough to buy a...
People actually steal the flags.
Yeah, they go on both.
Now, I heard a lot of shit in my life. But if you have to break into a World War II fort memorial to steal the flags, you really have to readjust your moral compass.
It's when, as the train was coming in, as I told you, but as over there you can't see it because there were some earth was put.
Yes.
Because the private owners done some mushrooms here for 15 years, so they've done, that's why it's not the same level. That's why now this platform, you can see this platform.
Theoretically, 150 meters that way, you get out where the train tunnel was.
We already went outside to see if we can because there's a wood.
Yeah.
And now it's difficult to go.
A lot of trees.
See, yeah. So I think even if we dig there, it will be better to dig underneath than on the left.
That was destroyed by the British as well.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's the dynamite.
Of course.
And over there, you can have, you see a part of, I can't remember the name of the big machine that gives the electricity.
The generator.
Generator, yeah. So that's part of a generator engine there. And you have the trolleys that the prisoners used that were on rail, 60 centimeters.
And is that exploded from the British as well? So the
yes, and it's where we were, behind
that
where
we
we
behind
were.
there, okay.
You know, where we see the third shaft, it was behind that where I show you.
Oh.
You know.
Yeah.
The blowing up of the tunnels was a very sore point of contention between the allies of Churchill and de Gaulle. Churchill had ordered the tunnels blown up right after the war in Europe had ended, so no weapon system could ever be in place here aiming at London. De Gaulle had not been informed, or his acceptance had not been sought, it had just been done. And it is true to say that de Gaulle was not the most popular of the allies. In fact, he pretty much ran afoul of everybody.
It was in 44, 12 August 44, I think. And it was he'd done already 50 missions.
In fact, he had been so unpopular that attempts on his life had been made while in England before D-Day.
It's getting worse now. It's getting worse. I think I have to tell that because it's getting...
What's down here?
So, we don't know.
Oh, good.
Visited the site.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going anywhere because you're under rock, but you want to make sure that things don't fall on people.
A piece of it, and I think it's cracked there. You have to say
Yeah, you could take it. This might be one of those where you take a stick and you just hit out the knock out the loose part. Not that I hate to say that. And that's that incline again.
Yeah, no, I can't tell you that.
I know, it's strange that they have these sloping galleries.
It's a shame we don't have a lot of reports here, you know. And normally there's a student that is doing his 5 or 6 years of historian studies, and he's going to help us this year to have more information, you know, on secret.
This is the metal slab that would slide over the firing ports. When I say metal, this is an enormous steel plate. It almost looks like battleship armor. So these are the 5 firing ports.
Today there's still a lot of unanswered questions as to exactly how these were to have been installed and how to protect the muscles if there would have been a sliding or a closing lid. But up top it's quite interesting to see the remains of the enormously well protected muscle openings, and we have to go have a look.
Yeah, the impact from the bombing still clearly seen. Even if it is covered up by very thorny bushes. And just making your way on top of the cave, so the ramps here
it all looks like a cheese. The landscape is now covered with plants, but a lot of them are just, it's strange to imagine how this would be a lunar landscape towards the end of the war, or in 44, because there's so many craters still here. They're just dots in the landscape now, filled up with plants, except for a few of them as you go up to the completely post-war destroyed firing ports. It's just amazing to see this crater. Now, some of them might have been destroyed by tall boys, but they were destroyed by the British afterwards, much to the dismay of the French. So this was one of the firing ports. And over here, smaller crater, I think was just a tall boy. So all the firing ports are in this direction over here. After some of the first bomb runs on the location, several of the shafts were just inoperable. One tall boy almost made it down one of them, but I remember some of the post-bomb run photo runs, there was one of these heavy steel reinforced concrete plates that had been dented and just hit in the corner, and I think this is the one. Wow. It is so impressive to see the remains of these guns. I guess we'll call them guns for the sake of argument, but the muscles are relatively small. The projectiles are nothing like you would imagine World War I, 420 millimeters flying into the trenches and the bunkers and the forts. These were smaller, but they were faster and they were extremely high powered. And we saw at the Belgian forts exactly what kind of damage the smaller version of the Röchling shell could do. This would have devastated London and its underground. It's just impressive that they built this and the core so easy to target by British bombers. So this is what I was looking for. Wow! Look at the destruction of this place. It looks like standing on a mountain. And it's reinforced with rebar and everything. And there's more down there. Wow. There you still see, I don't know if that's any of the openings. There's square symmetrical openings down there, little holes in the cement. This is impressive. This really is impressive. This is just as impressive up here as it is down below, if not more. This truly is something. I'm very, very glad I get to see this. This is exactly where the muscles were. This is where the firing platform was. The metal platform was over here, shielding the guns. That extended deep down here on their rails. These are so small. It's amazing they built this whole structure just for such a small projectile. But it was a powerful one, as we have seen clearly in Belgium, as we saw. This is what they tested at Fort Arbon.
The guns themselves were smooth bore, and given the estimates using regular gunpowder in it, they would travel the 95 miles to London. No ammunition was found, so only guesses could be done as to what they were. And remember that several different types of ammunition was made for the gun and later found throughout Germany, and it's hard to determine the validity of the actual gun here. It is in fact quite doubtful that the Allies' post-war testing of the gun was ever accurate, since no specifics were ever found and a lot of different test munitions were used, including those for range testing and not for the actual firing. But let's go to Belgium and let me show you exactly what the Röchling shell could do. One of the reasons why Röchling and Condors were chosen to pick and work on these specific weapons was that they had developed the Röchling shell, which was a deep bunker penetrating bomb that would also fire through 5 meters of reinforced concrete and steel rebar. These weapons were some of the top innovations of artillery work of the day, and they were tested, such as here, this small obscure Fort Arbon in Belgium. You may not have visited here, but here you can truly see and appreciate just how powerful the Röchling shell really was.
Wow. So this must have penetrated all the way through.
Practically, yeah. The large impacts would be from the Röchling shells. At the end of the battle, this unit, this casement was pretty much complete. This is all practically all from testing.
Yeah. This is the first in my life where I have seen the impacts of German special weapons. And this is the fort where you can still go and see how these ground bunker buster bombs that the Germans were making during the war in top secrecy. The villages were all sent away when they were tested. They tested them here and they penetrated 30 meters down and hit the tunnels. A lot of them, and you'll see that.
Wow. Watch your head coming in.
Wow. Wow, so this was... And of course there was no door there. This was not the... there was never a door here.
No, the only access was that 30-meter shaft.
Here was a 47mm cannon.
Yep, the 47mm gun that's in the entrance to the fort.
Yeah. That was the one that was sitting here.
That's the one.
Wow. So this must have been a heavy satchel charge.
We believe it's a shape charge.
They could have used a shape charge. Wow, that would be a whole new interesting story. So what happened up here? Is that from the same charge?
This would be Röchling damage.
This is from this. Yeah, okay. That's from the testing. Whoa! Damn! Not the barbed wire, but this. Röchling shell, or?
Yes.
Wow. So they came back and tested some of their most advanced secret technologies. Something that we are still using today. That was tested here. Wow. This is something else. And here you can clearly see the shape of the block as it's sort of, it's like an inverted U, isn't it?
That's right.
They fired cannons on this as well, testing? Regular artillery, or was it just...
I believe it was just the Röchlings.
And this was another firing position, or?
No, I believe that hole is from the Röchling.
It does have that diameter. Well, I guess it would be easier to develop some sort of firing ports by shooting shells through them instead of having to actually build the holes. They literally fired one through every one of these. I mean, some of them must, no, that's a square. That must have been a firing position. There's a square metal frame on it, isn't it? Or am I just seeing?
I'm not convinced.
No, you know what? I think you're right.
But I think that's another hit.
I think you're right. I mean, when things are mangled to this degree.
Now here you've got a Röchling hit, and you've got a gun position.
I guess that will give us a good option to compare. And we have something that came. We must have had two hits, one from up here and one from there.
That's right. I mean, the one above could be one. If we look from the outside, we might see a big hit just above this position.
Yeah. And there's the kinetic energy which is blowing it. So that's the firing position, and this is the hit from the shell. I mean, if it can penetrate 30 meters of earth and still go through rebar, shooting it straight on through a bunker like this would be no problem. Imagine if they had them at the time of the invasion. They could just line them up and just shoot straight through every bunker every one had.
We're getting into places where the explosive ones have come through. So you've got shrapnel damage on the walls. One's come through here. Another one's come through here. Another one over there. It's gone through the floor.
Jeez, how many do they fire this thing?
Hundreds. The fields are like cotton.
I'm just shocked how the false ceiling is reinforced.
And then the floor is a false floor as well. So you've got the floor's raised and it's gone through here.
So this was a complete oval?
No, not at the bottom, but it was for the ventilation.
Okay.
For the air to come through.
So that's one. And that's another.
Now the Germans took away practically all the shells to study them. But if you look here, I'll lift this up.
I see it.
Let's lift this up. And you imagine that has come through all that mud and rock through a reinforced concrete ceiling, which you can see just above you. And you can almost imagine seeing the paint on it still. You can still see traces of the fins at the back.
Wow.
How can that be in such good condition, having punched through all that?
So that came through right there. And obviously non-explosive, or it wouldn't be there. So that came through there and went straight down there, and it's still all these layers of cement and rebar. And that was in 43.
And it's in perfect condition.
We could probably drop it once again. Ever thought of pulling it out and see what the tip looks like?
Washings come through here. But this has been this is the commander's office, which is a bit derelict.
And honestly, we've been to a lot of artillery ranges and firing ranges where they fired regular munitions. To see how they tested these Röchling shells, how they would just penetrate the bunkers, is absolutely staggering to see. They would just cut through these things like butter and cut through 30 meters above and still go through the roof of these into the underground hallways. That's amazing to see. That really, really is an absolutely terrifying thought for infantry, knowing that you're sitting in the best forts you could build, and with these new shells, the Germans could have shot straight through them. And with the explosive shells inside, these were just tested without explosives, mind you. This was just the kinetic energy punching through these. That is something. One thing is the amazing capability to penetrate bunkers and above-ground facilities, but also the deep underground penetrating capability of the Röchling shell is amazing. And when we go deep in underground into the lower gallery, some 30 meters down here at Fort Aubin, you really truly can see and appreciate just exactly how devastating this weapon was. Now, if you marry that to the thought of a Röchling-type shell fired from the London gun, hundreds of kilometers away, slamming down into London, to the building, to the undergrounds, the sheer kinetic energy with a little explosive would have been devastating. Take a look.
So if we turn left,
That's cool.
now we're getting to more interesting spots.
Holy.
So you've got Röchlings come through here. We can see where one came. I think there's one through there, sort of closed up. I think there's probably just one on this point, and it caved in the roof. This room, I have accessed it in the past. It's a bit of a scramble, but if you look, there's been a total collapse inside there. Another Röchling hit, at least one, probably more than one.
And this would have been an explosive shell. At least the one in there would have been.
Yeah. Every time you see shrapnel on the holes
Yes.
in the walls, that's where the explosive ones have come through.
Although, I mean, just the damage of the kinetic energy of the one.
And when I guide people through, I try and keep this, they often come with small kids, and I try and keep them entertained a bit as well. So there's some nice touches I mentioned in there.
You know, I'm not done with this room yet. Jesus. Wow, look at that.
So it's good to have those kind of footage, because this is what makes this fortress unique. You've got little human touches, which other forts have as well, but you've got this kind of damage. We haven't got the couplers in place, we don't have the guns in place, but we're unique for this.
Hang on. See if I can do this. Wow. This is just so impressive.
It gets better.
I love when he says that.
So you have, stupid torch, another one there, coming through the side.
Yeah.
Now, there'll be a lot of rubble and stuff in here from all these shells that have come through, and people in the past have tried to clear it a bit. So a lot of it's been dumped at this end. So we're getting up to the hospital wing now. But if your light shows, this to work. There, it's not flashing. Look through. We can go around the back of this so you get a better view.
You mean I can get a better view than this?
Oh yes.
Wow. But I like this view. Wow. Look at that. So it came through somewhere up there.
Actually, at the far end of that corridor, which we can get to from the other side, there's another radio room. You see this antenna just at the end. So that's the third radio antenna.
Oh yes. The destruction of these things. And there's another thing. They hit them. They hit the tunnels.
Yeah. I mean, some people have told me that they're incredibly inaccurate. I don't think they are.
Inaccurate?
Inaccurate. There's a hole in the floor here. So, oops, carefully he says, and then I'm the one that falls over. There's one come through here. We can go around the back of that blockage, and there's a perfect imprint in the floor of the nose of one of these shells. Imagine if the Germans had this technology in 1914, none of the forts would have lasted at all.
I mean, just the fact that they can 30 meters underground, penetration is one thing, but you also that they hit these in the testing was.
But look at the damage when the shrapnel damage. So you go first.
On this one, yes.
I'll be in the way again. Again, the concrete is over the ventilation. So this is the hospital wing. I think this is operations. The operators are. This wall's burning out because there's shells behind this wall. It's really coming out.
Yeah, that is a little pregnant.
And here on the floor is, there you go, one's come through there. And perfect round hole. And it's nosed there.
Yep.
And you've got these traces of the tile floor for easy cleaning. Blood, I guess. Of course.
Hospitals and kitchens.
So this is the damage. We were off to the left, and this is the damage from this side.
This really is impressive. And I'm still impressed that they actually managed to hit them. I mean, even with the maps, what altitude were these delivered?
I don't know. I know they were fired very, very high. And there was a special steel, or a special metal that was used. It was very expensive for the noses, to be able to punch through.
This was almost more than tungsten, wasn't it?
I do like this cheap guys. We've got another hit straight there. Come from there. It's an angle.
So what is this metal?
I think that's metal flooring. It's not Röchling. It's just some metal pipework that's made under the concrete. Because remember, in the hospital wings, you'd have drains here for washing them out. Because you have tile floor. And it's come from there, and it's a beautiful is the wrong word, it's a perfect round.
Oh yes.
Absolutely perfect, as you can also imagine it had been drilled yesterday.
It just drilled straight through everything. And then I guess it's hit that, whatever it was. It didn't penetrate further than that, did it?
No, because it's exploded. This is an explosive one. As soon as it's detected airspace, it bang.
Just the fact that the Germans had a weapon that would penetrate 30 meters and detect airspace in 1943 is mind-blowing.
Here we've got the wall.
Yeah, the ever so slightly pregnant wall. There's got to be something inside this wall.
Oh, there's going to be something behind that, just behind that. I mean, the fields are pockmarked.
Yeah.
If you look at that 1947 aerial photo I sent you, if you look carefully, it looks like a pincushion looking at it.
I'm going to have a little bit more of an enhanced look at that, because now I'm looking for something that I did not know I was looking for before. And here's the one from there. I hit the 4 right there. Tile straight through the rebar. Nice little nose there. Nice little nose sitting out there. Came through the roof. Right there. And then there's this, which is just, I mean, if this is how bunker buster bombs worked then, you can imagine how they work today. And you see this hanging by the rebar. I'm curious, where was this special secret technology actually used in battle and in combat? Because they were tested in 43. You knew they were implemented somewhere after that. I mean, and just the pressure of this explosion would have killed anybody in any, even the adjacent hallways. The air pressure would have killed anything in here. I am just so impressed with the destruction of such a relatively small and fairly cheap weapon, actually. I mean, it was basically a cannon barrel, wasn't it? It was a cannon. Wow. And they hit it. They hit the damn tunnels. That's the impressive part. This is part of the wall.
Yeah.
Who painted the red?
Someone in the dim and distant past, painting around the.
With the impacts. So it wasn't the Germans, just.
I don't know.
Okay, well. It would be interesting to see the paperwork for these tests.
Well, whoever got the paperwork at Peenemünde now, was that the Russians?
Actually, the Russians got Peenemünde. However, the good General Kammler evacuated all the papers, all the materials, all the weaponry before the Russians got there. So when the Russians got to Peenemünde, there was very, very little for them to get. He handed everything over to the Americans with von Braun and Dornberger, and they had brought the papers with them along with the 600 scientists that had worked on the rocket programs, and they were all turned over to the Americans. And after a few days, when Dornberger and von Braun were secure that their deal they had done with the Americans was secure, they handed over all the papers.
Right, I didn't know that. There's a very nice clear round hole in the rock at the side here, so this one came in at an angle. I don't know if you can, but just there. And it's taken out all this making a big crater.
How could it come in at that? Oh, yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess it would have come in.
It's a very steep angle. It's sort of like that.
Interesting.
It's not vertical.
You don't think it's in there?
No, it's come through.
It's come
taken
through.
out this whole area.
Crawling around underground in a German secret weapons test from World War II.
I have to confess I didn't.
That was a support beam, just like on the others, just like
Yes.
this one that got.
Sorry, I'll go that way.
So it was just pretty much peeled. Well, at least now we know how much rebar was in the pillars or in the supports.
Very true. So basically we've done this corridor, that's the hospital wing. And we'll find you some just.
Kinetic energy. It is just staggering what that can do.
Come through a very small area. We can see the three holes, for want of a better phrase. They've come through 1, 2, 3.
Jesus. Neat holes. Wow. Look at that. That's the other one. I mean,
That's got to be, what do you reckon, 2 meters away?
this hole?
For 3?
3. This is easily 3. This could even be 4. This just took out. Now you see the rebar. Oh, well, this is not really rebar. This is the metal roof and the cement underneath. Wait, there's no rebar. Is there?
This is a shape.
Yeah. So maybe that's why it took out so much of it, because there's a little bit. Where I'm standing right now is a place that very few people have actually seen, and if you had seen this in 1943, you would not have been happy, especially not if you'd been here when this happened. The Germans were testing their new bunker buster bomb, the Röchling shell. They were fired from various different ways. It was a bunker buster. I am 30 meters below ground, surrounded by reinforced concrete, went straight through, hit the tunnels, and this is what remains. They tested hundreds of these just to perfect them. They would punch through the ground and they would detect an airspace and explode. Many of the ones we've seen with the damage, they were just inert. It was just simply the kinetic energy that made the damage. But when they put explosives in as well, this was scary. And that was 1943. You can imagine if they had this in 1940, when they invaded these forts, they would have just gone through a butter of every fort and every bunker anyone had built. The destruction of these things. And there's another thing. They hit them. They hit the tunnels.
Yeah. I mean, some people tell me that they're incredibly inaccurate. I don't think they are.
Inaccurate?
Inaccurate. There's one come through here. We can go around the back of that blockage, and there's a perfect imprint in the floor of the nose of one of these shells.
I mean, just the fact that they can, 30 meters underground, penetration is one thing, but you also, that they hit these in the testing was...
Look at the damage when the shrapnel. Again, the concrete is over the ventilation. There you go. One's come through there, and perfect round hole. And it's nosed there.
Yep.
And you've got traces of the tile floor for easy cleaning. Blood, I guess.
I'm still impressed that they actually managed to hit them. I mean, even with the maps. What altitude were these delivered?
I don't know. I know they were fired very, very high. And there was a special steel, or special metal that was used. It was very sensitive for the nose to be able to punch through.
This was almost more than tungsten, wasn't it?
I do like these cheap guys. We've got another hit just straight there. Come from there. It's an angle.
So what is this metal?
I think that's metal flooring. It's not Röchling. It's just some metal pipework that's laid under the concrete. Because remember, in the hospital wings, you'd have drains here for washing them out. Because you have a tile floor, and it's come from there. And it's a beautiful. Beautiful is the wrong word. It's a perfect round.
Oh yes.
Absolutely perfect. You can always imagine it had been drilled yesterday.
It just drilled straight through everything. And then I guess it hit that, whatever it was. It didn't penetrate further than that, did it?
No, because it's exploded. This is an explosive one. As soon as it's detected airspace, it bang.
Just the fact that the Germans had a weapon that would penetrate 30 meters and detect airspace in 1943 is mind-blowing.
Here we've got the wall.
Yeah, the ever so slightly pregnant wall. There's got to be something inside this wall.
Oh, there's going to be something behind that, just
Yeah.
behind that. I mean, the fields are pockmarked.
Yeah.
As the London gun in Mimiec never achieved its capability of offensive action towards London, but the gun was deemed sound, the project came under the control of SS General Hans Kammler. He ordered it to be relocated and ready for action in late 1944. A battery was constructed of two shorter or half-size barrels of the V3 gun. They were approximately 50 meters long with 12 side chambers. They were placed in the hands of Army Artillery Unit Artillery Abteilung 705 under the command of Hauptmann Patzig. These were sited in Wooden Ravine by Lampaden in Germany, about 13 kilometers southeast of Trier. The two guns were aimed west, resting on 13 steel support structures on solid wood bases, on 34-degree slope. The newly liberated city of Luxembourg was at a range of about 43 kilometers and was designated target number 305. On the site itself, concrete blockhouses were constructed between the two gun tubes, as well as smaller bunkers to hold projectiles and propellant charges, as well as air raid shelters. The assembly and mounting of the guns at La Pade coincided with the final preparations for the Battle of the Bulge. The supply of ammunition had become problematic. Due to the state of the German railway network, there was constantly being bombed, so cranes and other equipment had to be borrowed in order to get the guns up. Also, the production of shells had taken hits. Time had also become critical, and it was decided to use a 150mm finned projectile with a discarding sabot, weighing 95 kilograms and carrying a 7 to 9 kilo explosive charge. The propellant comprised of a 5 kilogram main charge and the 24 subsidiary charges with a total of 73 kilos powder. But the main firing projectile was not the original munition intended for the gun. We don't exactly know what it looked like except from the main casing. And by this time the Ardennes offensive had begun. On 16 December 44, Kammler received orders from the German High Command in the west to begin firing at the end of the month. And the first gun tube was ready for action on 30 December 1944. 2 warm-up rounds were initially fired, followed by 5 high-explosive shells, which were fired in sequence, attended by Kammler himself. The muzzle velocity was approximately 935 meters per second, and 183 rounds in total were fired between then and 22 February 1945.
It's hard to see what's under the rocks and when they fell down.
So we are on the side of the Hochdruckpumpe or fleißiges Lieschen, or in German also called Tausendfüßler. There were installed 2 cannons. We now on the plate of the cannon number 2, I think. They originally were built up to support the Ardennes offensive late 44 because of lack of ammunition. Shelling was beginning, I think, end of the December, the most January 1945. The only thing we can see is the rest of concrete here. There was the barrel block, and then there was a wooden construction. On the end of the construction there's a big hole, something as a kind of flash hiding. And there are detailed Kriegstagebuch of this unit who managed to work here, and they described every day the amount of grenades that were shot, but I think of both cannons only 150 grenades were shot via Luxembourg.
When did they decide to set up here?
They decided after the demolition of these concrete thing at the channel.
Mimic?
Yes, and the Germans had 4 cannons left. They shortened it a little bit. Normally it was about 120 meters about long. The rest were 50 meters, and they installed 2 cannons here and 2 other ones in the elders to shell Belfort. But in the elders they were never used because the Americans advanced so quickly that they must build up the cannons and returned to the other side of the Rhine. And here was the same problem. The Americans advanced very fast, and they were only 3 kilometers away in a night and Nacht und Nebel, and in German we say action. They were pulled down and brought back to the other Rhine side. They had only also decided they had they made a big block of the rest of the barrels, and they want to explode them if it was not manageable to transport them on the other side of the Rhine. At the end of the war, they were found by American troops. American troops also were here and asked the people who lived around here and examined the rest of the barrels. They transported to USA, but in 1947 they were scrapped. We had here some special problem. On the one side, all this area was like in Germany Sperrgebiet when they shot. But the road we came from Trier to the inner side of Germany was a strategic road. They couldn't block it, and therefore the road must be used by Wehrmacht. And the people who lived here were allowed to live here in this Sperrgebiet. There were 2 mills and an old railway station, and the people who lived here could be here, but they were managed or forced to make this, to tell anything about they see. But there's some stories that children even go out of the houses and looked when the cannon shelled, because it was a very, very great noise and a terrible flash you can see in the night.
Yeah, there's no secret that this was here and this was firing.
Yes, there are the battery was sheltered by some flak units, and in the Kriegstagebooks they were described. They shot down a Thunderbolt. They shot down 2 Mustangs. This was. Yes, this could see that the Americans know where this side was. This offensive by the 6th SS Gebirgsdivision was obsolete because Trier was just occupied by German forces, and the other side also was occupied by American forces. They want to block the road between Serve and Trier. And like everything in Germany at late war, or in Germany in general, an order was given, and this order must be made, yes? And therefore this offensive came from this valley, and they climbed up the hill and blocked at the Dreikopf this road for a short time. But you must imagine, at 7th March the bridge of Remagen was captured. At 7th March the American US troops advanced via Saarland in the middle of Germany. This here, the Hunsrück, was like we can call a Brückenkopf, and it was absolutely obsolete to make an offensive here.
They were becoming surrounded on both sides.
Yes.
But they just made one last stand not far from here.
Yeah.
Was that so they could dismantle this or protect this?
This was dismantled, I think, February, a little bit before this offensive.
Okay.
In the Kriegstagebuch were described Kammler visited and was personally here when the first shots were fired via Luxembourg.
And there are V2 sites around here as well, isn't there?
Yes.
Or launch pads, you can't really, they're mobile launchers.
Mobile launchers. One is a hill near Rheinsel where we can pass by, because there are, it's described that one of the cannons was damaged by an American air raid on the railway. And therefore they backed these V2 unit to deliver two, I don't know the word in English, a crane in German. Cranes, yes, to put this from the railway cars to here.
Oh.
But they were not so badly damaged, they feared, and therefore they can build up the second cannon very, very, very fast.
So that's the platform, the foundation.
Yes.
Is this a stone or is this cement?
This is concrete.
This is concrete. This is the last thing left.
The rest of the construction was a wooden construction, and 15 years ago we went with a friend with a metal detector here, and we found some wires, because for camouflage reasons the trees were very smaller.
Yeah.
They're described about 2 or 4 meters. They bind it with
pull them
wires,
together.
this trees together.
Yeah.
And we found some nails, I think, where they put this wooden construction together. Wow. And then we went on the other side of the river, near Brookheid. We can visit afterwards. And there we found in the bottom, you have a screw, and the other side of the screw, this bolt. Yeah, we found some big bolts. I think they dismantled the cannon on the other side of the river. It's possible.
Wow. And it's funny, you think you're just looking at a steep path up in the woods, unless you know what was here. You would never have imagined that this would be the site of World War II special weapon. You had the 2 cannons, and then you had some shelters and a controlled building somewhere in the middle. There's nothing left of them, except maybe a little hole that I can possibly squeeze myself into, because it sounds like the stupid thing I would do. At least so all that we really have is that, a hole in the ground, and an SS man's grave up on the hill, and that's about it. So we would have been resting on this. So would the bottom rest here, or would there have been shouldn't there have been some holes for screws or bolts or something?
Or they placed the wooden construction in this place against the block.
Would there be a recoil on this? There wouldn't be a recoil.
No, any recoil.
I wish I could give you guys a wooden foundation here, or some cement, but I can't, because there's nothing left except a very steep uphill climb. This is where the muscle was, coming up from down there into this large void here. And this was the flash suppressor. You really do see it up well, especially with you in the picture. You can really see how big the hole is. That is a flash suppressor from hell. And this war noch tiefer, ne?
Ja, das war 4, also die sind heute schon wieder durch die Natur zugeschüttet worden.
Yeah. This was a lot deeper. This talks about 4 meters deep down this hole to suppress the flash. And when the cannon fired, they didn't hear all the chambers. They just heard one large boom. And all the locals around here would know.
One interesting note was that Kammler had planned to use the Arado 234 as a spotter plane, and always kept 20 or 30 shells on standby for when it could be coordinated with aerial reconnaissance to spot the hits and impacts.
This, however, never happened due to bad weather and the problems with coordinating the flights. However, it was innovative to think that the V3 gun and the first jets were actually going to be used side by side in a defensive manner. And the perfect angle to align a cannon such as this up against a target had been tested at the test ranges out in Poland. For comparison, I can show you there's a little bit more left of the infrastructure here in Poland than there is here at the site in Lampada. But it gives you a pretty good idea of how rudimentary and how easily you could put up these cannons. However, there would not be a whole lot of lateral movement.
Ja, aber das ist eine Betonplatte vom Bauschutz.
Vom Bauschutz.
Hier ist ja auch ein Stück Ziegel. Ich denke, die haben den Weg hier mit Bauschutz zum Teil verfüllt.
Ja.
Also das ist auch, denke ich, wohl hier mit den Runden können natürlich sein, aber es ist meiner Meinung nach dann schwer nachzuvollziehen, ob das...
Ja, das ist es. Also da kein Bunker.
Nein.
No bunkers, no cement here. That man's a machine. He just tears down this. He just tears down this side, up and down. I'm just filming you because it's just you're a machine, dude. Film the descent of the mountain because I can. Sometimes history's going up, and then sometimes history's going down. And here's a tree. He's just already young. This man outdates me by decades. Yeah, you don't see it when you come from the other side. It's one of the shelters.
Oder ich bleib mal so lange draußen. Nimm du mal den...
Aha! Ja, das sieht gut aus. Und es öffnen. Schon was.
Willst du denn rein, Tino?
Jo.
Soll ich dir irgendwas festhalten vorher? Oder geht's nicht weiter?
Soll ich reinholen? Ich bin ein Mann. Ja, das ist alles. Okay. Alright. This is styrofoam. I'm gonna lose my mind. Is not alright. So this is the shelter with a million of whatever the hell it is living here. Well, this is fun. Alright. Well, coming out. There's a lot of blocks in here.
Geht's nicht weiter, oder wie?
Nee.
Du brauchst gar nicht reinzugucken.
Nee, das ist nur ein kleiner Raum.
Ja.
Nur hier. Viele Moskitos und andere Dinge. Ah, das ist ganz nass hier. Fantastisch.
Ja, Moskitos sind fies, aber die tun einem in der Regel
Nö.
nichts. So.
There's one of the shelters for the V3. Hacked into the mountain here. It's not very big. Small crew, I guess. You really will miss this tiny shelter if you walk too fast. But that's how it is. And that's the other side over here, but it is so overgrown. You can probably only see it in the winter. Down here across the field are the sites, and here was the rail line for the loading and unloading of that time. No traces left of these either.
Die Verladerampe war auf der anderen Seite, denn hier war der Bahnhof und auch zwei oder ein Bahngebäude. Und the things we have found, these bolts, this was in this wood.
Was the rail here before they moved the cannons here, or did they build the rail to get the cannons here?
No, the train was before.
This was just a good logistical place to put up the cannons.
Yes.
You have the hills, you have the rail support.
Yes.
You're sort of away from everything.
On 12 February, Kammler was informed that only the last 70 projectiles would be delivered, and no more could be expected to be manufactured. He therefore cancelled the second gun setting up aiming at Thionville and ordered Artillery Unit 705 to be returned to a regular heavy field artillery unit. The last 6 shells were fired on February 22nd. The gun dismantled and were drawn in good order. The barrels were returned to the Röchling Werke. 185 shots had been fired total from here. 142 had impacted, with 35 wounded and 10 dead. The most notable military loss inflicted on the U.S. Army was a direct hit on a mobile laundry unit, with several trucks lost. It is, however, interesting to note on the overall performance of the V3 high-pressure pump gun that it was going to fire a regular hardened projectile that could be manufactured anywhere by any manufacturer, utilizing ordinary cordite, and this in a time of rocket fuels and exotic munitions. This, had it not been for the mistakes made in the 6 months lost in the development phase of this weapon, would have been the first to impact on British soil. And that was not the end of the giant V-gun. As we know, the Canadian-born Gerald Bull, the top ballistics and long-range gun specialist who also headed Operation HARP, in which he was attempting to balance civilian space research and U.S. Army research in setting a shell or a satellite into space using a gigantic gun. Eventually, Bull was shut down by the various forces that was now shifting to the use of missiles and rockets. He eventually ended up in the international arms trade and spent some 4 months in jail after having done deals with one part of the CIA and was yet hung out into the cold by the other. This embittered him towards the West, America and Canada, and he turned towards the Middle East. And being a renowned specialist in long-range artillery, with a dream of building an extremely long-range gun, he was eventually hired by Saddam Hussein to build it for him. This super gun was just that, 16 inches, and it had to be built in several different countries to disguise its real purpose. Yet the Israeli intelligence was not fooled, knowing well that this could be aimed at them. He was personally sat down and warned away from the project, but he continued and ended up with 5 bullets in the back outside his apartment. Thus ended the dream of the supergun. Maybe. Because one could say that the newly being developed and tested railgun is, to some degree, the same concept of an extremely high-velocity solid-core shell, propelled, however, by electricity and magnetism. So maybe we have not yet seen or heard the last of the supergun.
Behind me is Werner von Braun's first test stand. Down the road is Diebner's nuclear reactor. Over there is the Maginot Line and all its amazing forts. I'm visiting them all and I'm bringing them to you. So I really appreciate you like, follow, and share what I'm doing, trying to document all these important historical locations. And if you feel like you want to watch more pictures or documents that I use for these, go to lostbattlefields.com. And if you feel like helping me out with my travels, because gasoline and travel and airfare is expensive, my PayPal is there, protectionserviceint.com. You are more than welcome, but you don't have to. I appreciate all your support and all your help, and I love seeing these locations, and I love bringing them to you.